Yeah, let's get back to the UN Climate Summit for 2023. The UAE has come to a close with the final communique giving fossil fuels a yellow card in a manner of speaking. But the two-week summit of some 200 countries and others in attendance focused on the urgency of climate adaptation while balancing the energy needs of developing countries, especially in Africa. Now, Brent Barnette is a climate change expert and a director at ETK Group. He joins me now to share his insights on sustainability initiatives in key African sectors and a lot more. Great having you connected to the show tonight from Brazil. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Now, let's talk about, we've seen COP28 come to a close. So what role do you think finance play as a catalyst for sustainability in crucial sectors like energy, agriculture, water, sanitation, especially for Africa?
Thank you for having me on your program. When we talk about financing with respect of some of the challenges around climate change, we're really talking about two things. We're talking about financing the shift away from carbon-intensive sources of energy, sources of power. And we're also talking about a just transition. So we're talking about compensation for countries like Nigeria that might be asked to leave a certain amount of carbon sources in the ground, so leaving oil in the ground unused. So we're talking about sort of two aspects of climate finance. Beyond, and that's related to mitigation, so that's related to cutting back on carbon emissions. We're also talking about, and this was discussed quite heavily in Dubai, we're also talking about financing adaptation. So how can countries adapt to the coming impacts of climate change? And I think then the third area where there was discussion around finance had to do with loss and damage. So there ended up being something around, I believe it was US $700 million committed to supporting the loss and damage fund. So there was quite a lot of discussion around finance as it relates to many different aspects associated to climate change. Some of the discussions, I think, had quite positive outcomes. Some of them, I think, left a little bit to be desired.
Interesting. I'm sure you know that Africa needs industrialization. So we need strategies that could help the continent advance its green industrialization agenda. What do you think the continent Africa can do?
Well, you hear a lot of talk about leapfrogging over current infrastructure development frameworks. So rather than making investments, significant investments in the technology of the last century, carbon-intensive power plants, distribution networks, why not make investments in the technologies of the future? Now, the reality is that that can only take you so far. And the other component of this that's been challenging is the fact that investment to actually make that leapfrogging possible has not really been forthcoming, or where it's been forthcoming has been at sort of really onerous interest rates. So I think that the paradigm is the right one for Africa to think about making investments in the energy frameworks, the energy structures of the future, not the ones of the last century. The key is finding ways of financing that and making that happen.
Very interesting point there. I'm sure there's a whole lot more to discuss on the COP28 summit. Of course, the fall are still there as we digest the final communique. Thank you so much. We're going to touch base with you and see much of what you are doing in Africa, in Nigeria, and a few other countries. Thank you so much. We appreciate those insights from you into urgent climate issues and strategies for the continent. Thank you so much, and have a great evening, Brent Barnette, Director at ETK Group.